Hi, and welcome to Psych, Sports, and Safety with Dr. Laura Mealy. Hi, and welcome to my podcast regarding risk management on sport, fitness, and recreational facilities. I'm not sure if a lot of you guys know this, but I am also a sport, fitness, and recreational expert witness. So what does that mean? What does that look like? So I testify or consult or analyze different cases involving sport, fitness, and recreation, commercial or personal litigation. So if somebody is injured or killed or dies at a sporting, fitness, or recreational facility, I am hired to testify to speak on the matter. And that could either be through plaintiff or defense. So a little bit about my background. I have a PhD in sports psychology, and as most of you know, I have been speaking very often about mindset in sports and how I write a blog for Psychology Today. I'm a former Division I athlete. I played basketball at Arizona State, and I was injured, so I never completed my career, but I was very fortunate to continue on playing multiple sports and basketball as well as I got older. I'm currently a personal trainer and sports psychology coach. I am a Level 3 certified coach through the National Federation of High School State Sports. I'm a child supervision expert, an expert in sport injury prevention. I'm also a certified physical education teacher, and I speak in various seminars on sport, fitness, and recreational facility operations. So basically, I talk about the best and safe practices in a variety of different industries across sport, fitness, and recreation. So I am what's considered a standard of care expert. So when I go out and I give these talks, I speak about the best and safe practices of the various industries like I mentioned. So what are those industries? So we're looking at trampoline parks, gymnastics facilities, the adventure challenge or amusement challenge areas, climbing gyms, fitness facilities, sport and physical education, recess, after school programs, and playgrounds. So I would go in and inspect some of these venues depending on what the matter requires, and I'm able to speak to those various issues within those facilities. So for instance, in like a trampoline park, I would discuss the facility operations, or I can speak to the maintenance and supervision and inspections and, what the emergency action plan is, which is a whole other podcast other than today. Gymnastics facilities, how open gyms are run, operations and supervision, maintenance, inspection, paddings, matting, equipment, layouts. And that bleeds into cheerleading, right? Because there's a lot of injuries that happen in cheerleading when mats aren't properly used, or just some of the cheerleaders, they're just not mentally ready to perform some of the stunts, or are the kids who are supposed to catch them. When we look at amusement challenge areas, this is a new standard, and I speak very often about the operations and supervision inspection, and I actually help create it. And besides that, I speak about climbing gyms. I speak about their operations, the redundancies, auto belay, top roping, bouldering, the attenuating surfaces. I speak to the proper way to use a harness, to properly inspect ropes, I am actually, through the Pennsylvania Department of Agriculture, I am a certified extreme sport inspector, and that is climbing walls, various outdoor and indoor obstacles, as well as mechanical bulls, believe it or not, which I don't really handle too many mechanical cases. I don't think I've had one yet, but nonetheless, I've been trained on how to inspect various incidents that could happen within that venue. Typically, it's not something I would take, however. So when I speak about these different facilities, or for instance, a climbing facility, I speak about the different associations that are involved in it and what their standards look like. And I also speak against them sometimes, and not in a bad way, basically about being more prudent and reasonably safe, right? What does that look like? And quite often when I give my talks, I try to really help manufacturers and owners and operators understand the safe parameters and what the utility of what some of their patrons what it can look like, how people are going to misuse things. So how can you mitigate against those type of hazards? So it's very important that I speak outside of the standards, because sometimes they're just very lax, for lack of a better word. But I also feel that they should be a little bit more stringent on what they expect in certain industries, especially industries where people climbing 30 to 50 feet in the air, right? You want to make sure that facilities are properly being run. You want to make sure if you're selling your merchandise, your equipment to a fitness facility or to a climbing gym or trampoline park, that you want to make sure that when the end user gets a hold of that equipment, they have been properly trained. But in order to do that, you have to properly vet the area or the facility in which you are selling to. Fitness facilities and personal training. There's a variety of different credentials for personal trainers. There's a variety of different associations in terms of how to provide a safe environment, how to properly orientate people who come into fitness facilities. Again, you're going to hear, do you have an emergency action plan? Again, for another podcast. Again, this is just an overview of the direction we're going to be going with the safe part of my podcast. Quite often I speak about equipment failure and maintenance and how equipment needs to be checked and how to do that, right? People sometimes just buy a fitness facility or open one and they receive all this equipment, and the manufacturer should be providing the proper manual, should be providing the information, should sometimes even vet to see, do people even have a background in any of this type of stuff, so they can better run and, have a reasonably safe environment for their patrons. Because it's not all about making money, right? Because you're going to lose money if you're not running a safe facility. So I also speak about, in terms of the standard of care, like having a risk management plan, making sure that you're mitigating any type of hazards. Does something need to be padded? If the wall on the gymnasium's court is too close to the end line, is it reasonably foreseeable that someone might run into something that's protruding out, like a hook or a bolt or a box, an electrical box, something where you may need to safeguard it. And what does that look like, right? So you want to pad it or move it or remove it or relocate it, just something to make sure that a child or an adult who's playing a sport runs off the court, which is obviously very foreseeable, right? And how you want to make sure that they can be safe while they're participating in what they're doing. And there's so many different standards and guidelines out there. There's USA Sports, National Federation of State High Schools, American Society for Testing and Materials, which is the ASTM International, sport and recreation organizations, and there's state codes and bylaws for certain areas and certain venues. Very often in physical education standard of care, I would speak to supervision, equipment choice, maintenance, again, emergency action plans, right? The curriculum, activity choice, is the teacher or the coach appropriately sizing the kids up by skill and ability, planning team events. If there's a big track and field event, you want to make sure that you don't have the discus next to somewhere where kids can run through and get hit in the head by a discus. You want to make sure that there's proper safety around. And signage is extremely important. And you want to make sure that your athletes are getting their physicals, right? We want to make sure that these athletes are being cared about. We want to know, did they have any issues before they came to play? Is there something that the coach should know? Does this child have a heart issue? Do they have asthma? Do they have seizures? Just simple little things that could just be documented onto a physical or through a questionnaire would be quite helpful. The use of AEDs, proper placement of AEDs, again, another podcast that will be primarily through the Emergency Action Plan, the EAP. Inspecting equipment. How does that look like? What does that look like? I'm actually going to start having some videos besides my podcast on, okay, let's inspect our bands today. What does the manufacturer say about how long the shelf life is for these bands? Where should we store them? Carabiners, are they getting loose on the fitness equipment? Are they getting loose for my climbing equipment? Is my rope getting frayed at my climbing gym? Am I properly checking the climbers to make sure, one, they have their harness on, or they're properly tied in with their figure 8 knot? Are they using a secondary knot? Are you making sure that people who are visiting your facility are safe? And what does that look like? And that's everywhere. That's physical education, coaches, trampoline parks, like I mentioned, just so many different areas. And then one of the things that are near and dear to my heart, because I went through my own issue as a young girl, and I had wrote a book about it called Psyche of the Injured Athlete. And the first chapter talks about something that I went through as an athlete, and it was severe mental and emotional abuse that I never told my parents about until I was probably about 50 years old, and I'm 52 now. And they had no idea what I was going through. So there is something to be said for abuse of power through coaches and through child to child or teacher to student. Bullying is a thing, and teachers and administrators can be guilty of it as well, and peer-to-peer can be as well. So we all have to be cognizant of what that looks like, again, for another podcast. Harassment. Under no circumstances should a coach be belittling a player. Now, anyone who knows me knows I'm the first person to say not everybody gets a medal. So I'm not coming from that place. I'm coming from a place where some coaches can do some serious detriment to their athletes behind the scenes, and who is holding these coaches accountable? And quite often we're not seeing anything happen. I have seen it firsthand, and it's very shocking that people don't step up to make sure that athletes are also being protected. And it's not about mommy and daddy crying because their kid's not getting enough playing time. I have seen it happening with some star athletes, and I've seen it really hurt them. And this is something that will not only hurt them now, it will be carried with them psychologically for years until they deal with it, almost sometimes in a form of PTSD. So in order to end up my podcast right now, I want to bring it all together, because comprehensively right now I just spoke about a myriad of different things. But it's vital that appropriate measures must be taken to create and maintain a safe physical environment. Again, I am Dr. Laura Mealy, and thank you for listening to this podcast today.